Excluded from my sister's wedding for warning her about the groom. I booked a royal suite in Dubai instead. While she threw flowers at the bar and the groom vanished, my mother texted, "You always knew how to fix things. So, fix this." I didn't. I turned off my phone, sipped champagne by the sea, and let them feel what my absence really meant. I'm Harper, and this is how not showing up became the best thing I've ever done. This is how it all began. It started with a text message I read 3 times before I could even process it. "Hey sis, guest list is finalized. Had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Love you." My thumb hovered over the screen, rereading each word like they might rearrange themselves into something less absurd. Tough cuts. Hope you understand. I wasn't a coworker from her first job or a high school friend she hadn't seen since prom. I was her sister. Her only sister. The person who had for the past decade picked up every shattered piece of her when life knocked her down. At first I thought maybe she sent it to the wrong person. A mistake. She'd laugh, call me, say she meant to write, "Can't wait to see you, you're not coming." But no call came. Just silence. So I did the worst thing I could have done to myself in that moment. I opened Instagram. There she was. Brielle Quinn. Blonde curls falling over her shoulders in that effortless influencer way, teeth bright against coral lipstick, surrounded by a crowd of women in matching robes and champagne flutes raised. The caption said, "Yes to the dress with my 200 favorite people. Let the countdown begin." 200. My name was not among them. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. I sat down hard on the edge of my couch, staring blankly at the screen, my breath stuck somewhere between a laugh and a sob. I'd known my family could be dismissive. But this wasn't just forgetfulness. This was deliberate, strategic, calculated. I pulled up my contacts and tapped on Mom. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey sweetheart, what's going on?" Her voice was unusually upbeat, too bright for 9 in the morning. I didn't bother with small talk. "Did you know Brielle didn't invite me to her wedding?" The pause that followed was only a few seconds long, but it was all the answer I needed. "Oh, honey," her tone shifted into that soft, patronizing lilt I knew too well. "Don't do this. It's just a wedding. Let's not make it bigger than it is." I took a deep breath, holding it in like it might stabilize the shaking in my hands. "Mom, I'm her sister. How am I not on the guest list?" She made its sking noise. That same condescending sound she used when I asked why Brielle always got the newer phone growing up or why I had to clean up after her. "It's not personal." They had to keep the list small, and I cut her off. "Small, Mom," she posted that she invited 200 people. "That's not a guest list, that's a stadium concert." There was a beat of silence followed by a light, forced chuckle. "Well, you know how these things go. Weddings are expensive, and maybe she thought you wouldn't mind sitting this one out. You're always so busy with work." I could hear it in her voice. She was already moving on. Already rationalizing. "Wouldn't mind," I repeated, stunned. I've been there for Brielle through everything. When she got evicted from that overpriced apartment in Austin, I flew down and helped her move back. When she lost her job, I sent her rent money for 3 months. When her heart got shattered by that musician guy, who do you think stayed up until 3 a.m. talking her through it? She let out a long breath like I was exhausting her. "Harper, it's just one day. You're overreacting." Overreacting. That word had followed me since childhood, always flung at me when I refused to quietly absorb disappointment. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I felt like I had been airlifted out of my body, hovering above it all, watching myself unravel while they sipped champagne and picked out centerpieces. I could already predict what would happen next. I'd get worked up, Mom would sigh, Brielle would shoot off a half-hearted apology just to shut me up, and I'd be expected to smooth it over because I was the older sister, the sensible one, the fixer. Not this time. Something inside me buckled. A quiet final thud. If they didn't think I was worthy of being there, I wouldn't be. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table I helped build. I wouldn't show up in a dress I bought myself, smile through tears, and pretend the knife in my back was just a scratch. I ended the call. No goodbye, no breath to spare. I set the phone face down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a long while staring at the reflection of the window in the stainless steel sink. I could see the morning clouds drifting slowly above the bare trees outside, indifferent to whatever pain I was feeling. Then something unexpected happened. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt something cold and clean move through me. Not rage, not grief. Clarity. The kind that comes when a fog finally lifts and you see clearly how little space you've been allowed to take up. How much you've given. How little was ever given back. My hands moved on their own. I walked back to the phone, opened a travel app, and began scrolling through places I'd always wanted to go. Places I never let myself dream about because I thought being available for everyone else was more important. I searched luxury getaways. The first option that popped up: Burj Al Arab, Dubai. 7-star resort. Royal suite. Private butler. I clicked. Noah's name came to mind. My boyfriend of 2 years. Steady, kind, thoughtful. He'd always encouraged me to stop pouring from an empty cup. Maybe this was finally the moment I'd listen. Without thinking too hard, I sent him a message. Want to disappear to Dubai for a week with me? He responded within 2 minutes. Thought you'd never ask. I smiled for the first time that morning. A real one. Not the one I wore for family events and holidays, but something closer to peace. If I wasn't good enough to be part of their perfect day, I'd make my own. In a city where I didn't owe anyone anything, let them have their wedding. Let them toast and dance and play happy family. I'd be on a beach in the Middle East sipping something cold with a man who actually saw me. And for the first time in years, I wouldn't look back. The next evening, I met Noah at our usual spot, a quiet little Italian place tucked between a bookstore and a florist shop in the Pearl District. It was the kind of place that always smelled like garlic, rosemary, and melted cheese, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down just enough to let your breath catch up. He was already at the table when I arrived, his sleeves rolled up, one hand lazily stirring his glass of iced tea. When he saw me, he stood, pulled out my chair, kissed the top of my head like he always did. Rough day, he asked as I sat down. Worse, I replied, picking up the menu, though I already knew what I'd order. Then I paused and looked at him. Can I tell you something without you trying to fix it? His brow furrowed a little, but he nodded. Of course, I told him everything. Not in a dramatic, performative way, but straight. From the moment I got Brielle's text to the call with my mother to the moment I booked 2 first-class tickets to Dubai out of pure defiance. He didn't interrupt. Didn't tilt his head with sympathy. He just listened. The way people do when they're really present. When I finished, I realized I'd been clenching my fists under the table the entire time. He reached across and gently unclenched my fingers. You ever notice, he said, that every time your family does something painful, you defend them before I even open my mouth? I blinked. Noah continued, quiet but steady. Harper, when's the last time you did something just for you? Not for work, not for Brielle, not for the Quinn family reputation. Just for you. I opened my mouth to respond and realized I couldn't think of anything. I mean it, he said. And don't say getting a massage 2 years ago counts. A laugh escaped my lips, sharp and bitter. So he said, leaning back. Why don't we go to Dubai? Yes, let's go. Leave the country the same week she walks down the aisle without you. Let her look around that room and see the one person missing that actually mattered. That hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't cried when I got the text. I hadn't cried after the call with Mom. But something about hearing it from someone who wasn't part of the chaos, who saw me fully and still wanted to come along for the ride, made my throat burn. Wouldn't that be petty? I asked, the old guilt muscle twitching out of habit. Noah smiled. Number petty would be sending a singing telegram to her rehearsal dinner. This is choosing yourself. That's survival. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen. Let me guess, I said. You're booking it right now. Already did, he grinned. Royal suite, 7 nights. Direct flight from Seattle. I even splurged on the ocean view. You're not the only one who needed a reason to leave. I stared at him. You really already booked it? Of course I did. Do you think I was going to let you drink champagne alone on a terrace in Dubai? I leaned back in my chair feeling both stunned and something else. Lighter. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, just promise me one thing. What? When we get there, I want you to pretend you've never been left out of anything in your life. I want you to walk through that lobby like the universe was designed just for you. Deal, deal. We toasted with wine we didn't even plan on ordering and split the tiramisu because I always claimed I didn't want dessert and then ate half of his. Later that night, back at my apartment, I stood in front of my closet with an open suitcase and a blank mind. I didn't know what one packed for emotional liberation. After 20 minutes of staring, I called Brielle up on my phone and scrolled through her Instagram again. Not out of spite, just curiosity. Her feed was filled with wedding hashtags and professional photos, long captions about her love story, and selfies with girls I hadn't seen since middle school who somehow made the guest list. I glanced down at my open suitcase and reached for the red dress Noah had once called dangerous. I folded it carefully, placed it inside, and added the gold heels I hadn't worn in over a year. Then came the silk slip I never had an occasion for and the swimsuit I'd bought last summer with a tag still attached. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Mom. I ignored it. 2 minutes later, a message popped up. We really hope you'll reconsider. Brielle doesn't mean to hurt you, she just has a lot on her plate. I deleted the message without reading it twice. Another buzz. Brielle, this time. No text. Just a heart emoji. I stared at it for a long second, then put my phone on Do Not Disturb and tossed it onto the bed. In the morning, I would drive to Seattle with Noah board a plane and let the clouds swallow the version of myself that spent her entire life trying to be enough. But tonight I made tea, lit the candle I'd been saving for some special occasion that never came, and watched the city lights blink softly through my window. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. By the time the sun rose the next morning, my suitcase was half full, and my heart felt strangely calm. I moved slowly through my bedroom, pulling dresses off hangers, tossing swimsuits onto the bed, checking weather in Dubai even though I already knew it would be warm. There was something ritualistic about it all, as if folding clothes and clicking zippers could somehow fold away the ache. Nobody from my family had reached out, no calls, no texts. Not even a passive-aggressive thumbs up from my mother. That silence said everything. I paused with my phone in my hand. I didn't want to reach out first, but I also didn't want to leave without saying anything at all. Something about that felt like surrender, and I'd done enough of that. So I typed out one short message to Brielle. Thanks for helping me see I never really belonged. I hit send and immediately turned the screen off, tossed the phone face down onto the bed, and walked into the bathroom. The reflection staring back at me in the mirror looked tired, but there was a spark behind the exhaustion. Something sharper. More self-possessed. I brushed my hair and applied a little mascara like I was preparing for something sacred. Not revenge, not rebellion, just arrival. I reached up to pull the necklace from around my neck, the one Mom gave me when I graduated from college. A dainty gold chain with a charm that read Big Sister. It used to mean something. I wore it for every holiday, every family dinner, every one of Brielle's breakdowns. I set it gently on the bathroom counter and left it there, glinting beneath the soft white light like a symbol I no longer served. Back in my room, I zipped up my suitcase and sat down for a moment. The silence pressed in thick and heavy, and like clockwork, the past came creeping back. I was 17 again. I had just won a statewide essay contest. First place. Full scholarship to a college out of state. The only thing I'd ever done completely for myself. Brielle was in trouble again. She'd been caught cheating on a final and suspended for 3 days. Mom called a family meeting, which really meant I got lectured on how to be more understanding. She's going through a rough patch, Harper. Just be patient. You're older, you need to set the tone. I remember sitting at the dining table with my acceptance letter in my hand while Brielle sobbed dramatically in her room. And Mom looked at me and said those words I never forgot. She's your sister. Let her have the spotlight this time. You'll get plenty more chances. I never told her, but I tore that acceptance letter in half that night, said I wasn't ready to move far away. Said I wanted to save money. Everyone praised me for being so mature. I didn't feel mature. I felt erased. The memory faded as my phone buzzed beside me. For a second, hope flared in my chest, the pathetic instinct that maybe someone had finally decided to care. I flipped it over. It was Noah. Boarding passes came through. Want me to bring breakfast on the drive? I smiled and replied quickly. Yes to both. He showed up 30 minutes later with 2 lattes and a bag of warm croissants from our favorite bakery. He kissed my temple as I climbed into his car, then took my bag and loaded it into the trunk like it weighed nothing. I didn't say much during the drive to Seattle. I didn't need to. The radio played softly, the sky was pale gray, and the miles rolled beneath us like water under a bridge. I had no interest in crossing back over. When we reached the airport, everything moved in slow, luxurious steps. The check-in agent called me Miss Quinn like it was something royal. The security line didn't exist in our lane. The lounge had fresh fruit champagne and chairs so soft I nearly melted into one. And when we finally boarded, the seats were wide and private with long windows that stretched toward the clouds. Noah settled beside me, offered his hand, and I took it without hesitation. The flight attendant offered drinks before takeoff. Noah raised his glass to me. To cutting our own guest list, I laughed a sound that surprised even me. To not being where we're not wanted. As the plane lifted off the ground, I pulled out my phone, opened Instagram, and snapped a photo. Our legs stretched out in front of us, glasses in hand, a slice of sky in the corner of the frame. I typed the captions slowly. Cut from the guest list, upgraded to the royal suite. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. I knew exactly who would see it. I put the phone away and leaned back into my seat, letting the hum of the engines lull me into a quiet I hadn't felt in years. This time the silence wasn't abandonment. It was freedom. We landed just after sunset. The sky outside the cabin window had turned into a soft gradient of lavender and gold, and the city lights of Dubai glittered below like a necklace draped across the earth. As we taxied to the gate, a flight attendant leaned in and smiled. Your car is waiting on the tarmac, Miss Quinn. Rolls-Royce as requested. I glanced at Noah. He gave me a little shrug like it was no big deal. But I saw the glint in his eyes. Stepping off the plane and into the warm desert air felt like walking into another world. The heat wrapped around me like silk, dry and still. Waiting at the bottom of the stairs was a black Rolls-Royce with gold trim, a uniformed driver standing beside it holding a placard with our names. Inside, the car smelled faintly of leather and jasmine. The seats were buttery soft, chilled water bottles waiting in a crystal tray between us. As the driver pulled away, I pressed my forehead lightly against the window and watched the city blur by. Minarets, skyscrapers, curved glass towers reflecting fire-colored sky. It was surreal. You okay? Noah asked, reaching for my hand. I nodded. Just trying to believe this is real. He gave my fingers a gentle squeeze. It is, and you deserve every second of it. The car pulled up to Burj Al Arab and my breath caught. The hotel rose from the coastline like something pulled from a fantasy, all sail-shaped elegance and glowing lights. Inside, we were welcomed by name-handed chilled towels and flutes of something sparkling. I barely had time to register the gold pillars, marble floors, and 20-foot aquariums before we were being escorted to the royal suite. The elevator doors opened onto an entire private floor. Our suite had a spiral staircase, velvet armchairs, walls trimmed in gold leaf. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of the Arabian Gulf, and in the corner stood a grand piano under a chandelier. I walked toward the windows and pressed my palm to the glass. The water outside looked like brushed metal under moonlight. There was a knock. A butler arrived with a silver tray and a note. Dinner is confirmed at Al Mahara at 8. Shall I prepare a car, Mr. Reed? Noah thanked him and turned to me. Hungry, I smiled. Starving. At 8 sharp we descended into the restaurant via a private elevator that led into a massive underwater dome. Al Mahara felt more like a dream than a restaurant. Floor-to-ceiling aquarium walls surrounded us, schools of fish moving silently through coral reefs as we dined in candlelight. Noah ordered the chef's tasting menu. I chose a glass of wine I couldn't pronounce. For the first 10 minutes, we barely spoke, too overwhelmed by the food, the atmosphere, the sheer disbelief of it all. It wasn't until the main course arrived that my guard slipped. I wasn't expecting it, but somewhere between the third bite of saffron sea bass and the way Noah looked at me across the table, it just happened. "You know what's weird," I said, setting down my fork. "I keep waiting for a text. From her, from Mom, from someone." He didn't say anything. Just nodded and let me go on. "But they're not coming, are they? They probably think I'm sulking in my apartment waiting for them to throw me a breadcrumb." Noah reached for his wine. "They probably haven't even noticed you're gone yet." That stung, but he wasn't wrong. I used to think staying quiet made me strong. Like if I absorbed enough, stayed calm enough, didn't make waves, they'd eventually see me. Appreciate me. "And did they?" he asked softly. I let out a breath, slow and bitter. Number. It just made it easier for them to forget I was there. Easier to cut me out without feeling guilty. "You know," he said, swirling his glass, "I've met a lot of people who mistake being easygoing for being invisible." I looked down at my napkin folded neatly in my lap like a soldier standing at attention. I think I was afraid to take up space. Afraid that if I asked for too much I'd get even less, so I settled, over and over. And now I'm sitting in a 7-star hotel with a man who sees me. I'm surrounded by more beauty than I've ever allowed myself to experience. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I have to earn it. You don't. You never did. I felt the tears sting before I could stop them. Not sobs. Just the quiet ache of recognition. Of letting go. Noah reached across the table and took my hand again. "This is your life, Harper. Not a consolation prize. Not a substitute for the seat they didn't give you. This is yours." I nodded, blinking fast. I'm not sure who I am without the fixing. Without the pleasing. Maybe that's what this trip is for. To find out. We finished dinner slowly, savoring every moment. Outside the hotel, we took a walk along the private beach. The sand was cool beneath our feet, the water humming softly beside us. Noah slipped his arm around my waist, and I leaned into him. Far above us, the Burj Al Arab glowed in soft pink and gold lights, and for once I didn't feel like a guest in someone else's story. I felt like the headline. The morning of the wedding arrived without ceremony. I woke to the sound of waves brushing the shore below our balcony, the soft rustle of fabric as Noah handed me a cappuccino before sitting at the edge of the bed. The sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting golden streaks across the marble floor. It was peaceful, so achingly peaceful that I forgot what day it was. Until I checked my phone. One new message. From Mom. "Still time to change your mind." I stared at the words for a long while, then locked the screen and set the phone down on the table without replying. Not a single message all week. Not a question about where I was, how I was, whether I was okay. Just a last-minute reminder that I could still fulfill the role they'd left empty. The role of the peacekeeper. The placeholder. The obedient sister. No thanks. By late afternoon, Noah and I were on a yacht off the coast of Dubai, part of a sunset cruise he'd quietly arranged. There were no crowds, no chatter. Just the gentle sway of the boat, the smell of salt in the air, and a horizon so wide it made the world feel clean again. I stood at the railing, glass of Prosecco in hand, my hair dancing in the wind. The sky turned from gold to apricot to violet. Noah was inside talking to the captain about dinner reservations, and for the first time since we landed, I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. The screen glowed with carefully staged images from back home. Brielle in her gown. The vineyard backdrop. Rows of white chairs, mason jar cocktails. Everything curated to perfection. Everything but the truth. I uploaded a photo of my own. Just the water, the faint silhouette of the Dubai skyline behind it, and a sliver of my hand holding a glass toward the sky. Caption: wishing peace to everyone back home. I didn't check to see who liked it. Dinner was served on the upper deck under lanterns that swayed with the breeze. The table was set with silver cutlery and white orchids. I wore the black satin dress I'd packed at the last minute, the one that made me feel a little dangerous. Noah wore a dark blazer and no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. We looked like two people who had nothing to prove. After dessert, we danced barefoot on the deck, his arms around my waist, our movements slow and easy. There was no music, just the lapping of water and the faint hum of the city in the distance. I closed my eyes and let myself feel the weightlessness of it all. When we returned to the suite later that night, I washed my face, tied my hair into a knot, and climbed into bed with every intention of sleeping like the dead. That didn't happen. At 1:13 a.m., my phone started to buzz. Then again. And again. Mom. Brielle. Tessa. Then Mom again. I ignored the first 4 calls, then flipped the phone over, fully awake now, my chest tightening for reasons I couldn't explain. 5 missed calls. 2 voicemails. 14 texts. My pulse kicked up a notch. Noah stirred beside me. "Everything okay? I'm not sure," I said, quietly thumbing through the notifications. "Mom. Call me now. Emergency. Tessa Harper. Please, it's bad. Call me back. Brielle, I need you." I blinked at that last one. My sister, who hadn't spoken to me in weeks. Who had uninvited me from her own wedding. Who had smiled for cameras and toasted with strangers while pretending I didn't exist. She needed me. My first instinct was to respond, to fall back into the reflex I'd honed my entire life. Be the one who fixes things. Be the one who shows up. Be the one who cares. But I sat still. If something had gone wrong, and clearly it had, I wasn't going to be the bandage they reached for now. Not after slicing me out so cleanly. Noah reached for my hand, his voice soft. "Whatever it is, it's not your responsibility." I nodded, but I didn't move. Another buzz. This time from Tessa again. I didn't open it. Instead, I got up, walked barefoot across the cool marble floor to the balcony, and stepped into the night air. The city sparkled in the distance, a quiet constellation of light and steel. I could still hear the ocean, steady and unbothered. The desert breeze touched my skin gently, like a reminder that I had made a choice. A hard one. But the right one. Inside, the phone vibrated again. I let it. I stepped back inside and closed the balcony door gently behind me, the hum of the city replaced by the low pulse of silence in our suite. The phone buzzed again. Then again. It lit up with a flood of names I knew by heart. Mom. Tessa. Brielle. Then Mom again. Another from Tessa. For a moment, I stared at it, just watching it light up over and over, the vibration echoing on the nightstand like a heartbeat I didn't want to feel. I reached for it not because I wanted to answer, but because curiosity finally outweighed the exhaustion. Tessa had left 3 voicemails. I played the first one. Her voice came through in a panicked whisper. "Harper. Oh my God. You are not going to believe what just happened. Chase is gone. He walked out. No warning. He and Brielle had this huge fight right after the cocktail hour, and then he just left. Got into a car and disappeared. Like vanished." I froze, one hand, still gripping the phone, the other pressed to my chest. She wasn't done. Brielle freaked out. She threw her bouquet at the bar, screamed at the photographer, started cussing out her bridesmaids. People were crying, guests were leaving. It was chaos. My eyes widened as I slowly sat down on the edge of the bed. Tessa continued, her voice lower now. "And then your dad and Uncle Dean started yelling at each other, like full-on screaming. Dean blamed Brielle. Your dad blamed him for being too hard on her. Grandma Irene tried to calm them down, but then said, and I swear I am not making this up, she invited the whole damn world except the one person who held this family together, and now it's all in ruins." A pause, then a quieter breath. "I'm not saying it's your fault, Harper. I'm saying maybe she's realizing what happens when she cuts out the only person who ever kept her grounded." The message ended, but the storm it unleashed inside me kept spinning. I sat there for a long time, staring out at nothing, the sounds of luxury, soft air conditioning, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional lap of waves fading into background noise. The next voicemail was from Mom. Her tone was clipped, her voice thin with tension. "Harper, I don't know what you're doing, but this is not the time to act like a child. Your sister is devastated. This whole thing is unraveling, and we need you here. This family needs to stick together. Now. Of course. When everything collapsed, suddenly I mattered again. I played the last one. It was Brielle. Her voice was ragged, breaking like glass under pressure. Harper. I messed up, okay, I know I did. But I need you. I thought I could handle everything. I thought Chase and I were fine and now he's gone. And everyone's looking at me like I burned the house down. I need you. Please. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the screen for a long time, the weight of their voices pressing down on me like heat. Noah shifted beside me, sitting up slowly, his eyes still heavy with sleep. What's going on? I looked at him, then down at the phone in my hand. Chase walked out of the wedding. Noah blinked. Wait. He left. Like during the wedding. Yeah. After the cocktail hour, Tessa said he and Brielle fought and he got in a car and drove off. The reception didn't even start. He whistled low, running a hand through his hair. Wow. I got back up and walked toward the window, pulling the curtain aside. The skyline sparkled in the distance. The ocean was a still ribbon of silver. I should have felt smug. I should have laughed or felt vindicated. But all I felt was a strange, cold detachment. Like watching a movie I already knew the ending to. Noah came up behind me and placed his hands on my shoulders. Are they asking you to come back? Of course they are. Mom said the family has to stick together. Brielle's crying. Tessa's panicking. And what do you want to do? I turned to face him. Nothing. You sure? I nodded. They didn't want me there when things were perfect. They don't get to want me now just because it's burning down. He nodded once, slow and steady. I think that's fair. I went to the mini bar, poured a glass of cold water, and sipped it slowly. Then I opened my messages and typed out 3 replies. To Tessa, thanks for telling me what happened. I appreciate the honesty. To Mom, I'm not coming back. Handle this yourselves. To Brielle. You cut me out when it was convenient. Don't reach for me now that it's not. I hovered over the send button. Then I pressed each one at a time. There was no thrill in it. No high. Just a deep, still sense of completion. I walked back to the nightstand, powered off my phone completely, and set it down. When I slid back under the covers, Noah was waiting with open arms. You okay? I think so, I whispered. He wrapped his arm around me, pulled me close until my head rested against his chest. Tomorrow, he said, we'll ride camels through the desert and drink mint tea under the stars. Deal. I smiled into his shirt. Deal. The next morning I woke to the scent of cardamom and honey drifting in from the room service tray Noah had ordered. The sunlight poured in through the balcony doors, casting long golden lines across the tiled floor. I stretched beneath the sheets, half expecting to feel that old familiar pang of guilt, the one that usually arrived with the start of a new day whenever something back home went wrong. But it didn't come. Instead, I reached for the fresh mint tea still warm in its ceramic pot and poured myself a cup. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the steam rise into my face as I listened to the quiet. Then the phone buzzed. I turned it back on only briefly to check our desert tour confirmation. I hadn't looked at messages, but now they flooded in like a second wave, stronger than before. Mom. Your sister is still crying. She hasn't eaten since yesterday. We need to talk. The family needs you. Brielle. Please. Please call me. I was wrong. I know I was. I messed up so bad. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. The old version of me would have replied immediately, even if only to soothe someone else's panic. Even if I had nothing to do with the fire they set. That version would have folded herself into a new shape just to keep the peace. But I didn't feel like folding anymore. I put the phone down on the nightstand, turned on airplane mode, and slid it out of reach. Noah stepped out from the bathroom, towel slung around his shoulders, hair damp, eyes still soft with sleep. You okay? I looked up at him, then at the sea outside the window. They want me to fix it. Again. He crossed the room and knelt in front of me, his hands gently resting on my knees. You don't have to set yourself on fire just to keep them warm. My throat tightened. I nodded slowly, the truth of it settling somewhere deep in my chest. I keep thinking if I stay silent, if I keep showing up, they'll eventually see me. But maybe they only see me when things are falling apart. Maybe they only love me when I'm useful. Noah took my hands and kissed my knuckles. That's not love, that's convenience. I looked at him for a long time, then reached for my phone again. I turned airplane mode off, opened the thread with Mom and typed one message. I'm not going to fix what I didn't break. Then I hit send. I didn't wait for the 3 dots to appear. I didn't care if they did. I walked to the window and pulled the curtains open fully. The sky was blindingly blue. The world outside looked untouched by family drama or the remains of a ruined wedding. It looked free. Noah came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. We stood there in silence watching the waves, the yachts cutting white lines through the water. I leaned into him. I'm done being the family fire extinguisher. I'm not their backup plan. I'm not their emotional cleanup crew. He rested his chin on my shoulder. Then let them burn, Harper. You're not a firefighter anymore. I let out a small laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time anyone had said it aloud. The first time I believed it. We got dressed, slowly moving through the suite without urgency. I chose a linen dress and sandals. Noah wore khakis and a white shirt, sleeves rolled. The driver was already waiting downstairs when we arrived, a Jeep with a canvas roof and a soft-spoken guide who offered us bottled water and dates. The drive into the desert was long and silent. The city faded behind us, replaced by sand that shimmered in waves under the sun. By the time we reached the edge of the dunes, it felt like the entire world had been scrubbed clean. We climbed onto camels, their footsteps soft and rhythmic against the ground, and watched as the horizon swallowed everything we'd left behind. At the top of a ridge, the guide stopped and motioned for us to look out. Endless. That's the only word I had. Noah reached for my hand again. Do you feel it? What, your own weight? Not anyone else's. I breathed in deep, the hot wind catching my hair, the sun warming the tops of my shoulders. Yeah. I do. We sat there until the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the sand. The past for once felt far away. And I didn't miss it, not even a little. That night back at the suite, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the noise. Not because of anything Noah said. He was already sound asleep beside me, one arm draped over his chest, breathing slow and even. It wasn't even the desert heat or jet lag. It was a memory I couldn't shake. Something that had been quietly pressing at the back of my mind, growing heavier now that the chaos had passed and there was room to feel. 1 month ago, I was at my office running late on a client review for a retirement portfolio when an email came in through my personal inbox. No subject line, no sender name I recognized. But the content had stopped me cold. Chase Finley, it read. You might want to double-check what he left behind in Austin. Not just exes. SEC records too. There were links. Screenshots, a PDF attached. I remember reading it 3 times, every line more nauseating than the last. It wasn't some conspiracy blog, it was a public investigation file. Chase had been flagged for manipulating investor statements at a mid-level finance firm in Texas. His name wasn't formally charged, but the red flags were all there. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone with the same name. But it wasn't. His signature was on 3 of the internal memos. The timeline lined up exactly with the gap he never explained in his work history. I didn't want to be the one to deal with it. But I also couldn't ignore it. I called Mom. I remember the exact words I used. I just want to make sure Brielle knows who she's marrying. Mom went quiet for a few seconds, then sighed like I was ruining her manicure. Harper, please. Do not go digging around for drama. If there was anything worth worrying about, don't you think we would have heard it from him? I told her I had documentation. I offered to forward it to her. She said, and I quote, I don't want to see it. And if you bring this up to your sister, I swear you'll ruin everything. I said I couldn't sit on this. That Brielle deserved to know. And then she said something I'll never forget. Don't make this about you. You're not the bride. Don't poison her big day because you're uncomfortable with her being happy first. I hung up and took a long walk around my block. I never sent the email to Brielle. I knew she'd find out anyway. But I did text her saying I had something important to discuss. Something about Chase. She didn't respond. Instead, she blocked me for 3 days. No explanation, no curiosity. Just silence. Cold and surgical. When she finally unblocked me, she didn't ask what I was going to say. She just sent a one-line message. Guest list is finalized. Hope you understand. At the time, I thought it was just tension. Some emotional flare-up that would pass. That eventually I'd be sitting in a row of white chairs watching her say vows under fairy lights. But now, with everything that had happened, the truth rang sharper. I wasn't left out accidentally. I was cut out intentionally. They didn't forget me, they eliminated me. Because I was the only one who wouldn't smile and pretend the cracks weren't there. I was the only one who wouldn't co-sign the fairy tale just to keep appearances intact. And now the cracks had split wide open, swallowing the whole damn wedding. I rolled over in bed and stared at the ceiling, my breath caught somewhere between anger and a bitter sort of understanding. They wanted a clean narrative. Brielle found love. Chase was charming. The wedding would be perfect. And I, the oldest sister with the inconvenient facts, didn't fit the picture. So they painted me out. I slipped out of bed, quietly padded barefoot across the room to the terrace and let the warm air wrap around me. The gulf stretched out like a mirror, dark and calm. Behind me, the suite glowed with soft yellow light. I thought of all the times I had swallowed my instincts to keep the peace. All the birthdays I planned, all the favors I granted, all the lies I let pass with a tight smile. And then I thought of that email. The facts I had been told not to share. The punishment I got for even trying. Noah joined me a few minutes later, wrapping a light throw around my shoulders. You okay? I nodded slowly. Do you remember that email I got last month about Chase? Yeah, the one you mentioned once but never brought up again. It was real. He was under SEC investigation. I told my mom. She told me to drop it. And Brielle blocked me. Noah leaned on the railing, his expression unreadable. So they knew. And they still went through with it. I don't think Brielle ever saw the files. I think Mom made sure she didn't. And now Chase is gone and they're acting like I was supposed to stop it. Noah shook his head. They pushed you out because you were the only one who wouldn't lie for them. And now they're drowning in a mess they made. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, suddenly cold. I thought being left out meant I didn't matter. But maybe it meant I was the only one who did. Noah didn't speak. He just pulled me closer. And for once, silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like peace. The next afternoon, the sun hung high over Dubai, soaking every wall and stone with golden light. Noah and I strolled through the historic Al Fahidi district, winding through narrow alleys and sun-dappled courtyards shaded by wooden lattices overhead. The air was thick with the scent of cardamom, cinnamon, and rosewater drifting out from cafes and market stalls as we passed. For once, we weren't rushing anywhere. There was no itinerary. Just two people walking in the stillness, letting the day unfold. Noah had stopped at a spice vendor, caught in a friendly debate about the difference between saffron from Iran and saffron from Morocco. I wandered into a small artisan shop filled with handcrafted jewelry and ceramics. The walls were lined with velvet displays and soft music played overhead, something slow and winding like the path we had taken to get here. A delicate bracelet caught my eye. Thin gold links, barely thicker than thread, with a single oval moonstone at its center. It glowed faintly under the warm lighting. There was nothing extravagant about it. Nothing loud. It was quiet, refined, intentional. And something about it made me pause. I picked it up carefully, holding it in the palm of my hand. It looked like something I might have bought for someone else once. A birthday gift. A graduation present. A peace offering. But never for me. The shopkeeper approached, smiling with a kind of gentle patience I wasn't used to. He said nothing, just nodded as I examined the piece. How much, I asked, even though I already knew the answer from the tiny tag curled underneath. It wasn't outrageous, but it was enough to make the old voice in my head speak up. Is that responsible? Is that necessary? I set the bracelet down and looked at my reflection in the glass. My face soft with sun, unfamiliar without worry. I looked rested. Like someone who didn't owe anyone anything. Noah stepped into the shop holding a small cloth bag that smelled of cloves and dried oranges. Find something, I pointed toward the bracelet, then shrugged. I like it. He tilted his head. That usually means you're trying to talk yourself out of it. I laughed because he was right. I don't know. It just feels like a lot for one thing. He reached for my hand and turned it over gently in his. You've spent your whole life giving. I've watched you write checks for people who forget your birthday. I've seen you drop everything at a moment's notice to fix problems that were never yours to fix. He glanced toward the bracelet. If you like it and it's for you, then it's not too much. I looked down at our hands. I don't think I've ever bought something just for me. Not like this. Not without guilt tagging along. He smiled softly. Then maybe it's time you do. The shopkeeper waited quietly, still holding the box. I nodded. I'll take it. He wrapped it carefully in silk and placed it into a small pouch. I paid in cash and tucked the pouch into my bag like a secret. Back on the street, the sun was beginning to lower, casting long shadows against the sandstone buildings. A breeze carried the sound of prayer in the distance, melodic and calm. We passed a cafe where a group of women laughed over tiny cups of Turkish coffee. I caught a glimpse of myself in the window, my hair pulled back, my eyes bright from the heat and quiet happiness, and I didn't recognize the tired, depleted woman I'd been just a week ago. As we walked, I found myself remembering all the times I had handed over pieces of myself to Brielle without ever counting the cost. There was the time I paid her rent for 3 months because she lost her job and didn't tell our parents. The $2,400 I wired that summer came out of my own emergency fund. There was the semester she failed and begged me not to tell anyone. I covered the $3,200 tuition so she wouldn't have to explain why she couldn't register for the next term. Then came the car repairs. $1,100 for the engine. Another $600 for tires. Grocery cards. Surprise bills. Bailout after bailout. Over 5 years, the total had reached more than $12,000. And I had never once been repaid. Not in money, not in apology, not even in acknowledgement. I never asked for thanks. But I guess a small part of me always hoped for it. Instead, I got blocked. Shut out. Cut from the guest list like a line item in a budget she didn't want to explain. I reached into my bag and pulled out the bracelet, slipping it onto my wrist. It felt cool against my skin, then warm as the metal adjusted to my body. Noah looked over and smiled. Looks right on you. I glanced down at it, the moonstone catching a streak of sunlight. It doesn't feel like a splurge, I said. It feels like a correction. We found a bench under the shade of a fig tree and sat for a while watching the light move across the pavement. A child giggled as she chased a paper fan through the square. A couple passed, fingers entwined, speaking softly in French. I turned to Noah. You know, I used to think I was the selfish one for getting tired of giving. He waited. But I don't think I'm selfish. I just never lived for myself. He didn't say anything. Just reached for my hand, let our fingers rest between us as the city moved slowly around us. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a shadow on someone else's stage. I felt like a person. Whole. Enough. Finally choosing herself. The city was starting to slow by the time we returned to the suite. Twilight stretched across the skyline, painting the buildings in dusky gold. The windows reflected the last edge of sunset like fire trapped in glass. I changed into a soft linen robe, slipped off my sandals, and for the first time in hours turned my phone back on. It only took a few seconds. Buzz. 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 I watched the notifications pour in like a flood that had been waiting behind a dam. 43 missed calls. Dozens of texts. 4 voicemails. I didn't check them immediately. I just stared at the numbers like they belonged to another person's life. A life I had lived once dutifully without question. I sat down at the edge of the bed. Noah walked in from the balcony carrying 2 glasses of mint tea. That bad, I turned the screen toward him without a word. He gave a low whistle and handed me one of the glasses. I took a sip, letting the warm sweetness settle on my tongue. Then I opened the first voicemail. It was Mom. Her voice was flat, but behind it I could hear the thin thread of urgency unraveling. Harper, your silence is making things worse. Brielle is not eating. She's barely speaking. You don't get to abandon us now. You always knew how to hold this family together. You always fixed what needed fixing. So fix it. I let the message end. My thumb hovered over the delete button. I didn't press it yet. I opened the second voicemail. Tessa again. Hey, I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone, but I recorded something. Grandma was talking to Mom in the kitchen and I thought you should hear it. Sending it now, please listen. A second later, a new message appeared. Audio file attached. I tapped play. It started with the low rustle of someone moving dishes. Then Grandma Irene's voice came through clear and cutting. You know what the real tragedy is? That girl held this family together for years. Paid for things nobody talks about, showed up when no one else did. And when she saw the truth about Chase, she spoke up. What did you all do? Punished her. Shut her out. Protected the fantasy. There was a long pause. Then she added quieter but sharper. If you had invited her, maybe this wedding wouldn't have fallen apart. The recording ended. I sat still for a long time, the tea cooling in my hand. I'd always wondered if anyone in my family ever really saw what I did. If anyone noticed the costs I carried, the quiet ways I held things together without asking for thanks. That one sentence from Grandma felt like a key turning in a lock I didn't realize I still kept closed. Noah came to sit beside me, resting his arm against mine. That was real, huh? Yeah, I said softly. That was real. He waited. I knew he wouldn't push. I opened the last voicemail. It was Brielle. Her voice was ragged, like someone trying not to cry and failing. Harper. I can't do this without you. I know I screwed everything up. I just thought I could handle it, that you'd always be there if it got bad. And now, I just need my sister. Please, please call me. My chest tightened, but not in the way it used to. It wasn't guilt, it was something else. Clarity, maybe. I thought about all the times I'd picked up the phone in the past without hesitation. Every late-night emergency. Every family drama I had quietly solved behind the scenes. Every moment I stepped in while they stepped back. I used to think that was what love looked like. Now I knew better. I put the tea down, opened Mom's latest text, and reread her words. You're being selfish. Your sister needs you. I took a slow breath. Then typed my reply. I'm in a place where things are still okay without me. That tells me everything. I'm not coming back to fix something I didn't break. I hit send. Then I opened Brielle's message. I didn't need time to think. My fingers moved easily now. You only reached for me when it all collapsed. And that's not love. That's need. I'm done being the emergency exit. I turned off the screen, powered the phone down again. Not out of anger. Not even sadness. But peace. Noah stood and extended a hand toward me. Come on. I booked a late-night hammam for us downstairs. Steam room, warm oils, and no notifications. I smiled, took his hand, and let myself be led toward something that wasn't about obligation or repair. I didn't know what my family would do next. Maybe they'd spin new stories. Maybe they'd finally face what they'd ignored. Maybe they'd learn. But I knew one thing for sure. I would no longer be the one who came running when the smoke rose. I was no longer the firefighter. I had finally chosen to stay out of the fire. The sun rose early over the gulf, casting streaks of amber across the horizon as I stood barefoot on the cool marble floor of our suite. The city below had already begun to hum, but inside these walls the world was still. I wrapped my hands around a warm mug of coffee and walked out onto the balcony. The breeze off the sea was soft and clean, and for the first time in years I didn't wake up with that tight coil of tension in my stomach. There were no messages to check, no apologies to draft, no invisible fires waiting to be put out. Noah stirred inside, stretching under the linen sheets. He mumbled something about room service and coffee refills. I smiled and stepped back inside, setting my mug down next to my laptop. The cursor blinked at me waiting. I pulled up our airline reservation and stared at our return flight, Friday, 8:10 a.m. Emirates business class. It felt too soon. Too abrupt. like it belonged to a version of myself I had left back at the airport. I clicked Manage Booking, then Change Flight. I moved our departure a full week ahead and upgraded our suite while I was at it. Ocean View Spa Access Late Checkout. If I was going to rewrite everything, I wanted to do it with both feet out of the past. The confirmation pinged my inbox. Behind me, Noah wandered in and kissed the side of my head. At the sound of freedom, I smiled. More like permission. I opened my banking app next, fingers moving more confidently than they had in days. I scrolled until I reached the shared account I had opened with my mother 6 years ago. A flex fund, we used to call it. Something we both contributed to, though in recent years I had been the only one depositing anything. At first, it was meant for emergencies. When Dad got sick, when Brielle totaled her car. But over time, it became something else. Quiet withdrawals for last-minute vacations, wedding deposits, unexplained checks written from my balance. Never a conversation. Never a thank you, just an assumption. I clicked Manage Access and removed her name. A prompt appeared asking if I was sure. I was. The page reloaded. Her name disappeared. Noah came up behind me, towel draped over his shoulders. You okay? Yeah. I just deleted a door I should have closed a long time ago. Next, I opened Facebook, then Instagram. Then every platform that had once connected me to a digital version of the family that had learned to treat me like a support beam instead of a person. Mom block. Brielle block. Tessa hesitation. Then block. Aunt Leslie. Uncle Rob. Cousin Drew. All of them. One by one, the invisible threads snapped. Not out of spite, but clarity. I had spent so many years being accessible to people who only remembered me when they needed something fixed. That version of me didn't live here anymore. I sat back and looked out the window. The sun had risen fully now, casting long shadows across the water. The sea sparkled like it had secrets I no longer needed to solve. Noah joined me at the small table, a second coffee in his hand. How does it feel? He asked. I looked at him, then down at my phone, which was finally quiet. Like I finally unpacked a bag I didn't know I was carrying. He nodded, eyes studying me for a long moment. Do you regret it? I shook my head. I don't regret choosing peace. I regret waiting so long to believe I deserved it. He reached across the table and took my hand. You've always deserved it. We spent the afternoon walking along the boardwalk by the marina, watching luxury yachts drift by like lazy clouds. We ate lunch at a Lebanese cafe tucked between high-rises, shared mesa and pistachio ice cream, and talked about everything except the people we had left behind. When we returned to the suite later that evening, I lay on the couch, exhausted in the best way. Not drained, not emotionally depleted, just content. I glanced at my phone again, now resting face down on the nightstand. No new messages. And it didn't matter. I opened my journal instead, one I had barely touched during the trip, and began to write. Not about the drama, not about the betrayal. I wrote about what I wanted. To sleep without the dread of obligation. To wake up and not have to prove my worth through sacrifice. To give only when it came from joy, not duty. I wrote until the page was full. Then I closed the book, slid it into the drawer, and walked barefoot out to the balcony. The city was lighting up again, golden and silver across the skyline. The call to prayer echoed faintly in the distance. Noah stepped beside me, his arm brushing mine. You really okay? I turned to him, and for once I didn't have to fake the answer. I'm more than okay. I'm free. And that I had learned was worth everything. The wind that night was softer than usual, curling off the Gulf with a kind of quiet gentleness I hadn't noticed before. From the balcony, the city stretched in every direction, glittering under the stars, humming in a language of its own. I sat in the robe I'd been living in for days, legs tucked beneath me, notebook open on my lap. The last page I had written ended with a truth I never imagined I'd claim. I was free. My phone vibrated once beside me. I almost didn't pick it up. But habit made me turn it over. A single email. From Brielle. The subject line was blank. I opened it anyway. Harper, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I needed to send it. You were right, about Chase, about the wedding, about me. Everything I built for that day was never about love, it was about proving something. That I had it together. That I could be the successful one for once, that I could stand without leaning on you. But the truth is I wasn't standing. I was performing. And I cut out the only person who ever truly showed up for me. I did that. I don't think I can fix any of it now, and maybe I don't deserve to. But I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made you carry it all. I'm sorry I made you invisible. And I hope wherever you are you're doing what you should have been allowed to do all along, live for yourself. Brielle, I read it once then again. It didn't make me cry. It didn't crack me open the way I might have expected. It made me feel something far more subtle. Like closing a book I had kept open for too long, waiting for a different ending. She hadn't asked for anything. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just a recognition of what she had done. And for that I felt something close to peace. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some silences deserve to remain intact. Later that evening after dinner, I received a text from Aunt Carol. "Hey, sweetheart. No pressure, but we're hosting a small Thanksgiving dinner. Just a few of us, no drama, I promise. You and Noah are welcome if you're free. There's always a chair for you here." I smiled at the screen, warmth blooming in my chest. I hadn't thought much about Thanksgiving. Normally, it meant obligation, tension, polite smiles and half-truths over turkey. But this invitation felt different. No agenda. No expectations. Just an open door. Maybe we'd go. Maybe we wouldn't. But the idea of being wanted without being needed felt rare and beautiful. Noah and I took a walk on the private beach below the resort. The sand was cool beneath our feet and the sound of the waves was steady like a lullaby that had no end. We didn't speak much, just walked. The stars above the Gulf felt brighter than the ones back home, or maybe I was just noticing them for the first time. Eventually, we sat down on a bench carved into the stone path along the edge of the water. I pulled my journal out of my bag and opened to a fresh page. I sat with the pen poised, unsure of what I wanted to say. Then I wrote I didn't lose my family. I just stopped shrinking myself to hold them together. I didn't disappear. I stepped back and let them see what absence actually feels like. I wasn't the one who broke anything. I was just the one who stopped pretending nothing was broken. I closed the notebook slowly and let the wind lift the ends of my hair. Noah looked over at me, his arm resting behind me on the bench. "What are you writing now?" "Just a reminder," I said, "that sometimes walking away isn't about giving up. It's about coming home to yourself." He nodded and leaned in closer. "And does it feel like home?" I looked out at the sea, endless and calm. "Yeah, it does." The waves whispered at the shore and the lights of the city blinked in rhythm as if agreeing with everything I had just written. I didn't need to go back. I didn't need another chance to prove my worth. I had already given enough. And for once it was enough for me. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like a background character in your own family, I want you to know you're not alone. Share your experience in the comments, I'd love to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe for more real-life stories like this one.